Hello everyone, this is Dartt. About a day ago I held back doing a video on this subject because it didn't directly pertain to what my channel is about, which happens to be mostly Blizzard games because I enjoy playing them. Well, it took literally 24 hours for the topic to become fully relevant. And I'll be honest, that's more than a bit scary. According to a piece on Kotaku, an internal Blizzard memo discusses efforts to hire and retain more women as part of a diversity and inclusion movement. The article goes on to say this is aimed at raising the percentage of women and underrepresented minority groups in its workforce and improving the work environment for those groups. Not everyone, just those groups. What the hell? Going on. Only 21% of Blizzard employees are women, wrote company president Mike Morhaime, and they leave our organization at a higher rate than men. Those numbers, according to Morhaime, are consistent with the game industry at large, but Blizzard wants to improve on them. Now, I think this is commendable. But if it's consistent with the rest of the game industry, then can you really do anything about it? Are there other issues at play, like taking time away from the job to build a family, going back to school to get an advanced degree, or some other perfectly reasonable explanation? The company will not set quotas for hiring female job candidates, but is encouraging employees to refer more qualified women to open positions. And it's looking into ways to better recruit from women's groups, conferences, and universities. I'm forced to wonder exactly which women's groups. Some of them are absolutely toxic. The company also plans to partner with organizations like Girls Who Code in hopes of bringing more women into game development and computer science. I did some checking up on this group, and it does seem like a legitimate professional group and not a cringy feminist organization. So good for Blizzard on this point, but I remain deeply concerned that this may serve as a foot in the door for other feminist ne'er-do-wells. Blizzard already has an LGBTQ council that offers monthly meetings and advises on Blizzard projects, and it recently created a similar council made up of women from various levels in the company, with the goal of helping the company's leaders think through ideas to attract more women and make Blizzard a more rewarding and enjoyable place for women to work. So why not extend the same attitude to all employees and not just LGBT and women? I can't imagine that Blizzard has someone dressed up like an orc peon, complete with green body paint, running amok, yelling, "Work, work," and bashing only women's workstation PCs with a hammer. I mean, if that were the case, I could perhaps agree that would be a little stressful. Recent years have seen Blizzard stress the importance of diversity in games, like Overwatch, at events like BlizzCon, and in the wake of an incident where pro Hearthstone player Terrence Miller dealt with a flood of Twitch chat racism during a major event. Okay, I'm going to stop this right here to clarify something. This isn't how this works. Someone in a competition isn't going to be managing a Twitch live stream in the middle of a game competition. That's absurd. An article in PC Gamer confirms this. He didn't find out about this until afterwards. Even so, looking at some of the Twitch comments, the level of toxicity in them is positively awful. But honestly, this isn't Blizzard's fault. Blizzard didn't make these comments, and it should not have to bear responsibility for them. To be quite honest, Twitch gamer streams that I have watched all bear one thing in common. The people posting comments always go over the top in an effort to get noticed. In that way, Twitch comments can be even more toxic than 4chan or Reddit. Moving on. There have, however, been ups and downs, with Blizzard taking flack for things like a pose for Overwatch's Tracer, which the development team ended up changing after controversy, and the game's problems with toxicity, especially towards women. It's a process, but Morhaime says in the email that Blizzard is in it for the long haul. I definitely recall the Tracer butt pose incident, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. My issue wasn't the character showing her posterior, it was her age. Honestly, I'm not sure Tracer is even old enough to vote, so I'm not sure her displaying her rump is a good idea. This raises all sorts of pedophilia taboos that, in my mind, trumps any feminist outcry. I mean, I'm not going to show them here, but if you want to look at a sexed up Overwatch character, you can be sure they've all been Rule 34'd, and all you have to do is a quick web search. There's nothing Blizzard can do about sexploitation of its characters. They just can't. As for Overwatch toxicity to women from men, I'm forced to wonder if it's not two girls from boys. I firmly believe that Overwatch attracts a younger player base than, say, Hearthstone, Diablo 3, or even higher-end World of Warcraft for that matter. A certain amount of immaturity is going to seep through into voice chat, and that's just the nature of things. Still, I don't see this as an excuse, and this should not be permitted to continue. All of this being said, it does seem on the surface Blizzard is taking steps that are both logical and rational, given the times we live in, and some of the problems they've encountered. So you may ask, if that's the case, what's the problem? Is there a problem? The answer is yes. Blizzard Entertainment has traditionally produced some of the very best games available for play. It accomplished that by hiring the best people for the job. Pardon me for being blunt, but having a vagina is not a job qualification. Neither is what sort of sexcapades you engage in outside of work. Neither is what skin color you possess or where you were born. The second these become job qualifications, the job ceases to be about the project at hand and starts being about racial and gender politics. And a direct result of this is that the end user of whatever product or service is produced suffers. Worse than that, what inevitably follows is that racial and gender politics escalate into victim politics. At this point, everything centers around appeasing what I'll call, for the purposes of this, victim tyrants. And this trend has been on the rise over the past few years, and if you're not familiar with this, you need to be. The basic story is that if you are any combination of white, male, Christian, or straight, then you enjoy what they call societal or white privilege. You are either the enemy, or you are shameful and need to admit to the fact that you are ultimately bigoted, racist, and closed-minded. And woe to you if you happen to actually be a straight white Christian male. You are the lowest of the low. You are a non-person. Your opinions do not matter. You have no voice. You are irredeemably part of the patriarchy, air quotes, and must be silenced, shamed, made into a pariah, or have bodily harm inflicted upon you. If you attempt to argue with them personally, you are harassing them. It doesn't matter how civil, well-mannered, and intelligent your statements, arguments, or concerns. I'm going to say this up front to put away any confusion. This is not a political movement. This is not in any way about social reform. This is an online ideological cult. It is aimed at suppressing free speech and expression. It's about shutting down any conversation that doesn't unilaterally agree with their talking points. Let's take a look at a few recent examples of what happens when victim tyrants run amok. A lot of you may know about Gamergate or have heard about it in passing. For those of you who haven't, it's centered around an online spat between game developer Zoe Quinn and former boyfriend Aaron Gianni back in 2014 over Quinn's questionable relationship with Kotaku website journalist Nathan Grayson. Gianni wrote a nasty blog post about Quinn, and all hell broke loose. 4chan and Reddit blew up. Fellow developer Brianna Wu and feminist mouthpiece Anita Sarkeesian also got involved in this mess. Now, whatever Wikipedia and the mainstream media has to say about it, 4chan and Reddit have always been a cesspool. Why you'd want to chase an argument into either kind of strains your credibility, in my humble opinion. Especially when you come out screaming harassment and death threats and I'm the victim here. I'm sorry, it's just too convenient. Factor Sarkeesian's tendency to play the part of professional victim, and it's even more suspect. Since then, Sarkeesian has parlayed her victim status into a bully pulpit. She and her brand Feminist Frequency have successfully gone after and cowed Bungie and Intel, been named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people of 2015, and gone on to speak before the United Nations. Not bad for a video game critic who, in her own words, doesn't much care for video games. Apparently she's doing good enough to rip into Boogie2988 and Sargon of Akkad completely unprovoked recently at VidCon. It's been my experience that victims usually aren't the attackers. She is a victim tyrant. What does Anita Sarkeesian have to do with Blizzard? Well, she offered extensive commentary on Overwatch that Blizzard was quick to act on, introducing stocky, blocky female characters like Zarya and Mai. Anita Sarkeesian and Michael Morheim hold Geek and Sundry personalities Felicia Day and Will Wheaton as mutual acquaintances and colleagues. Both Day and Wheaton made a point of weighing in on Gamergate with a position sympathetic to Sarkeesian's. Further, Wheaton penned Sarkeesian's Time magazine bio, and Morheim appears in an episode of Wheaton's Geek and Sundry show Tabletop. Another example is going on right now at Marvel Comics, what some people are calling Comicsgate. Marvel Comics, now owned by the Disney conglomerate, relaunched the Marvel Universe under the branding the all-new, all-different Marvel, and continues the trend of killing off its white male characters. Captain America dies in 2007. Nightcrawler was killed off in 2010. Professor X dies in 2012. In 2013, Marvel kills off its company mascot, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Wolverine dies in 2014. In 2015, as it has done at least once before, the entire Marvel universe is destroyed and eventually reformed. Afterwards, Iron Man and Captain America die fighting each other. The Hulk and X-Men leader Cyclops die in 2016. As someone who grew up reading Marvel Comics, this is bad enough. But what came next is absolutely awful. Professor X, who always served as a voice of reason and unity, barely had time to grow cold in his grave before being disinterred, his corpse desecrated by the Red Skull, who removed his brain and denied Charles Xavier his final rest forever. Peter Parker is replaced by Miles Morales, a half-black, half-Latino boy, by all accounts a very good stand-up kid. I actually like this character, despite it being part of a diversity checklist. Wolverine? Where do I even begin? At first we see a reformed Victor Creed, Sabretooth, promise to take up his mantle. The focus of his legacy soon shifts to his female clone daughter, Laura Kinney, X-23. Finally, he's brought back as an old man from an alternate reality, Old Man Logan. Best there is at what he does. And what he does is experience arthritis and mutter about the kids on his lawn. Steve Rogers is replaced by Sam Wilson, the Falcon, as Captain America. Honestly, I'd be fine with a black Captain America had it been left there. But Rogers is resurrected in the role and shown to be a Nazi. You know, what he's spent his whole life fighting against. Why would that be insulting? Meanwhile, Iron Man comes back to life, just to be rewritten as an adoptee, not Howard Stark's real son, and not worthy of the privileged life he enjoys, and to die again and leave his armor to a ridiculously immature, teenaged, supposed super genius young black girl named Riri Williams, who replicates his work by committing theft at MIT. The Hulk's death is rescripted into his gamma radiation being taken away from him by Chinese-born Amadeus Cho, who becomes the new Hulk. Bruce Banner is left broken and bitter and wanders the country trying to deal with all the damage he's caused over the years, with no possible redemption. A young Jean Grey, Marvel girl pulled from the past along with the rest of the original X-Men, outs Bobby Drake as gay. The argument has been made that she telepathically altered his sexuality. Thor has been rendered unworthy of lifting his own hammer and has been replaced by Jane Foster, who is now terminally ill with cancer. Thor has literally been stripped of his identity. He's not even known by name anymore. He's just Odinson. He also loses an arm somewhere along the way. To add insult to injury, the Foster Thor proves to be more adept at wielding the hammer within a few short weeks than the original, who's had centuries of experience and whom it was actually created to serve. Filling in the blanks are a new crop of non-white, non-male, and non-straight heroes who definitely do not conform to what can be called normal societal morals or ethics. For example, Squirrel Girl, who used to be an oddball, quirky, kind of cute, but what the fuck character, got beaten with an ugly stick, afflicted with Down syndrome, handed a victim tyrant personality, and thrown into a title. The art in these magazines has degenerated to ridiculously poor quality. If it's not crudely sketched, then it's been lifted from the internet and had characters photoshopped onto it. Really, the only characters that have survived this purge have been the anti-heroes. Deadpool, the Punisher, and Thanos. Probably because it's silly to say that psychotic nihilistic mass murderers are also misogynist bigots. All this has been the doing of a group of writers and editors that have come to be known as the Milkshake Crew. This after Marvel editor Heather Antos received a massive amount of backlash about all of this after posting a selfie on Twitter with other Marvel personalities having milkshakes. She and all the other folks at Marvel have been dismissing their detractors as misogynistic, racist, homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. You get the idea. They're not the problem. The fans are to blame. This has culminated in Marvel Comics claiming to be the victims of harassment. Does this sound at all familiar? Where have we heard this before? Of course, no one will speak to what form this harassment actually took. There's no evidence of it. Just a vague statement from Matthew Rosenberg stating, "If you care about comics being healthy and interesting, you need to make a stand against harassment. That shit will kill comics." Now, I doubt it'll kill them as dead as killing off the heroes, or introducing unrelatable replacements with no character, a one-dimensional personality, and robotic conversational skills, or even having shitty art and purposely tanking your company's sales. To give you an idea how bad sales are, basically the only sales are at a comic shop where they're sitting on the shelves unbought. Popular titles that once sold hundreds of thousands of copies now barely sell 5 to 20,000 nationwide. And 20,000 has long been the point where titles are considered not profitable enough and subsequently discontinued. I do hope Blizzard keeps a very close watch on this and does not allow victim politics to intrude on and hurt their games or affect their players. To me, that would be a tragedy of epic proportions. In my opinion, they could look at the example of EA or BioWare, whose games went to absolute shit after trying this. As paying players and customers, you deserve to know that the money you pay in subscriptions is going to pay for intersectional feminists to run the games you enjoy into the ground. If you want to learn more, links to everything are in the description below. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe.